Cool guys, hi. I'm Dakota Krout. I'm here to give you a talk today on system first series creation. Now, this is a really exciting PowerPoint for me because this is entirely based on my research into it, right? This is not, like my previous stuff is based on research of someone else's that I have made notes on. This is my personal experience, and so I'm not at all nervous to share it. So that's cool. Just a little quick thing about me. I am ridiculous and silly, and I don't have a big booming voice. So this is actually my logo, and as you can see here, this is a smiley face. So that's my Dakota Krout logo. So if that doesn't give you enough knowledge of who I am, you might. I mean, the door's back. No. Okay, cool. So a tiny slide about me. So I have been the Amazon and Audible top 5 overall listener's choice September 2017. I've had actually a whole bunch of those, but I just picked that one because it was the coolest. But I've had fantasy listener's choice, I've had certain months, and yeah. I'm the owner and president of Mountaindale Press, which is a huge deal for me because it's a really cool company, focusing on LitRPG, Cultivation, progression fantasy, and GameLit. I am a multi-7-figure earning author, and that's year over year. That's not in total to this point. I have nothing to sell you. I'm not hiring or taking on no authors. There's nothing in here that is going to point you at buying anything of mine, unless you just really like me and you're like, man, is this guy funny for real? I should read his stuff. You should, but I have nothing to sell in addition to this. So please let me, yeah. So I have been featured in Forbes, New York Times, the Associated Press. I've been the Time Magazine Person of the Year in 2006. And the really cool thing for me was I was the cover story for the Indie Author magazine. By the time I got to their booth on Monday, they had sold out of my magazine. And, I don't know. No, that's a good thing. I got one in the mail. I'm good. Yeah. So that was really cool. So I really want to talk about what this means, right? So system first series creation is not something that is specific to my genre, which is why I brought it here to talk about, right? It is the act of clearly defining a series where the rules that you write by are clearly defined, right? So clearly twice. Editors in here, stop me. I know, right? So this is something that is super fun. And so why would we want to do this, right? So writing a consistent story where the rules of the world are not meant to allow your character to win is a huge deal. It used to be traditional fantasy was a guy would walk in to some random room, find a sword, walk outside, the king's guard would attack him, he would kill all of them. And it's until that point he'd been milking cows, right? And doing that in today's market is gonna just not do as well as it once did at the bare minimum, and so having these nice consistent rules are really great. For new authors, this is a great way to set up your series for success, right? So it's a great way to get everything, all your ducks in a row, front load that work so that as you're writing, you don't get lost. For authors that have already put their stuff out, have already published, this is a great way to get a nice series cohesion or put it in place for yourself for your next book, right? So that you can kind of get all your ducks in a row there again, right? So, yeah. All right, so forcing creativity and witty outcomes is a lot more fun than just saying, he won. That's super boring, right? Building the system to allow for series expansion and additional authors is a really big deal, right? So if you are writing something and someday you're I want to go the Patterson model, and I just want to not the sell the name thing, but the open it up to other people to write in your world, right? If you want to have a big, massive, expanding universe, looking at Star Wars, looking at other things like that, if you don't know what you're doing, it's going to be really difficult at the end when you're trying to open it to bring people in and have them write with you or for you. Right? So nice simple. Reader engagement. If you know what's going on, your fans will notice, right? So this ties back to my talk yesterday, Achieving Mastery. If you know what you are doing, people see that you have confidence in what you're doing. People will have more confidence in you and play along a little bit nicer. Okay. So here's an overview of this presentation. So we're going to create the system rules. We're going to decide the end game, which is saving the day, the world, the main character, using a system, whatever. We're going to set the character's personality, so personality types, we're going to talk about that. Fitting the type to the system, and then outlining, so following the rules and completing the series. Okay, that's the whole presentation. We can end there if you really got a handle on that, but I think for the few of us that might not, So, So, I don't know if everyone here knows Brandon Sanderson. He's this author you may or may not have heard of, whatever. Kidding. So he has put together some really cool things, and I really like to look at what he's done and see what I can do to model myself after him, because you always are looking at someone higher up the food chain, trying to be more like them. And so for me, it's Sanderson, right? So the first law is of writing, right? Is an author, or it's the first law of magic, actually. So an author's ability to solve conflict with magic is directly proportional to how well the reader understands that magic. So if the characters solve a problem by use of magic, the reader should know exactly how that works. And if they don't, what you're doing is a soft magic system, and I can tell you that trying to open that up to bring other people in can be very, very difficult. Is that a question or am I boring? Okay, cool, question. All right.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying with this point. However,
Sure.
can you hear me?
Sure can.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I understand what you're saying with this point. My question is, if you are writing from a very tight point of view,
Sure.
where the character may not understand how the magic works, how do you reconcile that?
So if you are like walking in and you're like, okay, this is gonna be a cheeseburger now. Boom, it's a cheeseburger. And your character doesn't know how they did that. That could actually like be a whole story trying to figure out how they can turn stuff into magic, or like how they can use the magic. But if you are just constantly walking around and saying, I want gold, and you just have gold, and you don't have any conflict based on that, it's difficult because if you are not explaining it to your audience, they will get frustrated quickly. That's kind of what the idea is behind this. Can you give me an example that's a kind of counter example?
Sure, yes. So,
Sure, yes.
Sorry.
Well, first, what I think I understand that you're saying is that it's okay if, in the instance, if the character doesn't understand how the magic works, as long as at some point in the story you address.
I love that words actually.
So, like, an example would be, did you ever read the David Eddings series? Oh, okay. Well, it's a coming of age series, and the main character is a young man who's very clueless. And the first time he does something magical, he's like, "What the f, yo? Like, how did that happen?"
Well, I mean, we can do the same thing with Harry Potter.
Sure. Yeah.
So, like, hey, like the glass vanished and Dudley falls, right? And you're like, "Oh my gosh, that's magic! How did that happen?" And he's like, "I don't know how that happened." And then it's like, "Oh, it's because you're a wizard and you can go and learn how to control it."
Okay.
Right.
So was that summation about correct? What I was saying about, like, as long as you address it within the story,
Right,
at
so-
some point you're good.
Right. So
Okay.
and we're good.
Thank you.
So absolutely, like, so solving the issues, like, otherwise can become a, just hand waving, and that can be really unpleasant to read, and it's really hard to write that for multiple books in a row, especially if you're making a series. So knowing what you're doing, letting your audience know what you're doing, gives them like this nice, ooh, that feels good, I know what's going on, like the meta version of it. So, and we can talk more on that later, I'd love to. So, okay, so that's Sanderson's first law. All right, so let's get to the actual thing that I'm doing here. So part one is we're going to create the system rules. Now, this is basically choosing your physics. So it's a lot like tropes. It's very, very similar. Like, everyone in here knows what they read, right? You know what genre you're going to be writing in. You know kind of your thing, right? And just so you know, like, to make sure that I know what I'm talking about when I do this, my examples are LitRPG or Cultivation. However, we can apply them to other genres, and I give examples throughout, and I have worked with other people on making this happen. So just to make sure that I'm not full hot air up here. All right, so for this example, let's say I'm writing a Cultivation novel. For anyone who doesn't know what that is like, actually I have it right there. So people can like take in energy from the world and strengthen their physical body, right, or their soul, or whatever else is going on. So they take energy from around them, they coalesce it, become stronger, all that stuff. So choosing our physics, when we are choosing our physics, it's like I said, it's choosing our tropes. It's saying, here's what I want to do. Now that is chosen, so we've chosen our physics, we say we can cultivate, we are writing a romance, we are doing something else. What is that going to look like from that point going forward, right? And so like I want to say, like, one of the things you don't want to do is create a single-use system, right? So you want to not make something that is only for your character. If it's like a bloodline, well, you can for your story, but if you want to expand it out. If you want to be able to write a story that is going to be engrossing no matter who is coming in and writing it, you really want to make it so that it is kind of a general thing that you can use, right? And I have that a little bit later in these slides, but what I call that is a open formula system, right? So we say, like, at level 1, tier 1 of my abilities, they're touch only. So whether that is being able to make someone fall in love, whether that is hitting someone with, like, lightning, shocking hands, burning hands, things like that. And then, like, tier 2 is like ranged. So I can take the thing that I was doing and now use it at range. So burning hands becomes a fireball, right? And so that can be applied out more than just to one specific instance, right? So that's kind of what I mean by don't make it a single-use system. Make it something that is repeatable for multiple characters. So adding rules to your physics. So these are kind of my tips for doing this. So you want immutable character power thresholds. So you're making kind of like a general outline for a system, becoming more varied and specific as you break it down further. But those thresholds are supposed to be something that your character has to achieve, right? If you give it to them, it ruins the story. So it is a immutable power threshold. Otherwise, you run into the issue of power creep, where you are trying so hard to make the story interesting, but they're already like godlike power, and so now it's all about the side characters instead of about the main character. We've all kind of probably run into that by now. Having the absolute requirements to move forward or progress. That could be like, hey, you need experience, so you need to fight stuff, or you need to train your skills, gather energy, make an inspiration, and then have resources that are specified and known that can allow for faster growth. So part of this is the economy of what your system is going to be using. So if you can gain power for no cost, it is not really a fun thing to write, it's not a really fun thing to read. But having specific goals that people need to advance through the tiers, through the levels, make progress, is something that is really interesting. And that's why, like, D&D has been around my entire lifetime and still going strong, right? Because people want that codified knowledge of, when I do this, I will get stronger. When I do this, I can use this, so on and so forth. So adding rules is another big concept. So, like I said here, so this, I should have put this earlier to explain my open formula, but basically what that means is anyone at the same level should expect similar results. Mileage may vary, right? Your character is the main character for a reason. They're going to go and be cooler than some random side character. That's just what's going to happen. Next thing is, remember those immutable, that means things that do not change, right? So if you allow for flexibility, great. If you allow for rule breaking, not so great. Because if you're breaking the system, it's literally defeating the point of what you're doing. So this is where side characters come in, because other characters should be useful as well, right? There's a reason to have those characters. And it's to get through tough situations usually. So does anyone have questions on part one? Because I know it doesn't quite make sense. It all ties together in a minute, but if you have any questions right now, I'd love to answer some. Just go to my microphone. So we've decided what we're going to do. We're going to have this system over here. It could be like, hey, my main character is going to a small town, and so now I have to work on, my system now is small town economics, right? So say I'm writing a romance. I'm leaving the big city, going to a small town. What do they not have there? Maybe they don't have a Tesla power or a Tesla car charging station, and so my car breaks down. So now my system is, I'm in a small town without the resources that I need to leave. Make sense? Okay. So now you have to work on small things. So you're deciding the end game at this point. And a lot of this is like the inciting incident, stuff like that. But it's the reason for these series to exist, right? So the calamity arrives. That's what I like to call it. If people are like, oh, inciting incident, I'm like, calamity, yes. Destruction of all that you hold dear. Like, oh no, I have gone to this small town and now I find out that my suit-wearing boyfriend back in the big city is cheating on me while I'm gone. Oh no, right? Hallmark coming up, right? Almost Christmas. So, all right. I feel bad for all those suit-wearing guys. I'm over here like, oh no, I should like lose this and spread the polo. But I used to be a farmer, so I feel like I could like fit in the role there, so it's cool. So the calamity arrives, right? So it could be like a demon lord, it could be a corrupt enemy country, the rival love interest, and they all have one thing in common. You gotta take that sucker down, right? So that is the calamity that's arriving. That's the reason for your character to use the system that you have built to move forward through the system, okay? So the system that you've chosen, this person is like, hey, now's my reason to get powerful, to get strong. I'm going to start making progression toward whatever the end game is, defeating the big bad, right? So the story is in the doom, right? So the calamity is coming to your established universe. It is not happening and getting a system dropped on to stop or defeat, right? So it has to have rules that you know. Perhaps the people in your book don't know yet. Like it could be an apocalyptic situation where it breaks in and it's like, hello, the system has arrived, learn it or die, right? That is the thing that's a trope in our genre. But it's supposed to be like an established system, not something brand new that is created just for your character. So if you think of it like that, you're able to interact with it instead of like, abusing the system. Okay. So now we say, we are the main character. How do we use that system to our advantage to get a win, right? So do we build a team, find an ancient ritual, or get a restraining order on that big city slicker guy that's gonna come to town later on and try and bring your new love interest, right? So that is where you are going with this. Like you're using that system to take down the calamity at the end. Okay. So an end game tip. You take where you are now, why you want to change, and then you decide what happens after. And that is step 1 and step 2. Right? Okay. Part 3. Now it gets really fun because I know this way more because it's based on other research. The main character's personality, also known as they don't actually do whatever they want. You know, we've all had that moment where we're like, hey, our character I was gonna do it this way, and they just did their own thing, and it was just pouring out of my hands, ha ha ha. And it's like, yes and no. We'll get to that. All right, so here are the personality types, right? According to, this is the Enneagram chart, right? And so, yeah. All right, so there are 9 archetypes, okay? And they kind of fall into 3 big things, like people that act, people that feel, people that think, and then kind of everything interacts. So I don't know if everyone has seen this before, but it's a big deal because, let's see, I want to make sure that I'm not jumping slides here. But this is a big deal because it says, who can I create? What kind of personality can I have that can go into this system using the rules toward this endgame without either becoming a bland character or someone who crumples under the pressure, right? And so what I like to say is, if I am, can someone give me an example? Any kind of story, any kind of system that you're thinking of.
Mistborn.
I mean, like, well, no, so that's a series. So I'm saying, like, so, like, Mistborn would be, like, you're going into, like, the world of metals, like, so, like, where you ingest metals, do all this sort of stuff. Okay, cool. So, yeah, so, we have a main character, but I'm going to use a different main character, right? So I'm going to try and make my own model here. So we have a system in place. You eat certain metals, and you can only interact with certain metals unless you are the specialty person, like in Mistborn, who's not breaking the rules. There are exceptions, like this one person can use all types of metals, right? Cool, that makes sense. Like that tracks right along where I'm saying so far. Now we say, who can use that? Who can have all of that power without crumpling under the pressure, getting those big iron stakes through the eyes, whatever else is going on? Who can go and use this? And is it going to be like the challenger? Is it going to be this person up here who is going to face the enemy head on and dive right on in and fight? Probably they're just going to die really, really fast in that situation if you read Mistborn, because those guys are like really, really powerful. The main characters are not. Is it going to be someone who's just like this fun-loving, I'm going to go out and like just have fun, do this sort of thing? Probably also no, but it could be the reformer, right? So someone who wants to say, look, the way things are now are not how they should be. Like, more people should have access to this. We should be able to do trials and tests. So let's take the reformer. We're going to say, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to learn my abilities in secret, I'm going to like dodge the government, whatever it is. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to use the system to take down the system or take down the big bad, the calamity, this all tracking so far? Like, it's making more sense that I talk a lot more? Okay, because I don't want to feel like I'm just babbling. All right, so the personality types. We have the system that we created that's been around before our main character existed, right? We have the reason for the book to exist. That's the big bad, the calamity, the thing that we need to defeat. Now we have a person who can do what needs to be done using that system without, and I cannot stress this enough, becoming boring, right? Because that is the worst outcome. Is not like, I hated the book, or this made me feel, or anything else. It was just, how did you like the book? No read-through to the next book, right? That's the worst outcome. So now we have those first three, and let's get to number 4. So personality type action. So this is where you can go, like this is just a psychology thing. The 8 archetypes are, I'm sorry, the 9 archetypes are archetypes, right? There is so much more going on with that. So you can have like a reformer with a peacemaker wing, and like that's a totally separate personality type. So you can generate character models out of nothing, and it will tell you how they react to stress. So like, say we have an achiever, right? If they react to stress, right? So instead of going out there and trying to win the thing, they're gonna go over here and they're gonna become the loyalist, right? They're gonna find someone else to like build a team when they're stressed. But when they're feeling good, like when they have a period of growth where they're finding new things and becoming better at what they do, they're gonna track right up here to the peacemaker. They're gonna be like, they're gonna go from achieving things for themselves to being a diplomat who is making peace between nations, right? And all of that is right there in the psychology stuff. You can just read it right there. It's like, how does this person react? It has literal levels of health, of mental health, right? So if you're like, hey, I'm an average person doing average things, that's a 5, right? Like, so it's like on the levels of mental health, that's a 5. And as things get worse, you can drop down and it'll tell you, how does this personality type react under this type of, like, under stress that is like really bad? Like, they get unhealthy or they progress and get more healthy. And it'll tell you what that looks like. You can make arcing decision trees where it says, hey, they will say, or like they'll lash out right here. They'll lash out about this, but if they are given stimulus in this way, they're going to grow and become better as a person. It's a beautiful thing. It allows for really, really rich character development and benefit, crazy. It works really well with what I'm talking about. Yeah. You're so funny. Go. All right. Yes.
I'm seeing one of, can you hear me?
Sure can.
As close as you can.
Okay. I'm seeing one of my characters actually has, my main character has 2 of these, so she's kind of a more complex character, so she's the individualist becoming the challenger. So, is that a mistake, or should one character, can they be more complex and have?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
So no one is one thing, right? Everyone in here has complex emotions, feelings, all this other stuff. And this is more an attempt to have your character remain true to like the person that you're trying to write, right? So like if you look at like Star Wars, right? And you look at Luke Skywalker, every single movie he has a different personality, and it actually makes him pretty flat as a character in my opinion, right? Because you never know what to expect. So you're promising your audience cake but delivering them spaghetti, right?
Yeah, very quickly, because I'm seeing, for example, my characters, the individualist and the challenger.
Sure.
So possibly what I'm getting out of this is really great, is that there's more of an individualist initially, and then with some challenger aspects that come out, as the story progresses and she's being challenged herself. So she discovers that she has this inner. Actually, yeah, I just answered. Thank you.
So that's one of those things is people understand people really well, like at a very deep intrinsic level. And that is where my earlier comments of like, hey, I'm this person, and all of a sudden they just took off on their own, right? It's because you know who this character is supposed to be, even if you can't consciously verbalize it. And you say, this character wouldn't actually react like this in this situation. And so your hands just start going because your subconscious knows what's up. And so if you can codify that, if you can look at it and say, this is what they are, and I bet you if you go back into the psychology of it and you say, like, this is the personality type that I created, you're going to find right there, this is how they react. And you're gonna be like, son of a gun, that Dakota guy. Right? So, yeah. So, and this is what we do. Like, this is what we teach in Mountaindale Press. This is what we work to do to make really rich characters. Okay, so again, so this, if you go here, it literally shows you the different levels of mental health associated with that and how they react to stress and happiness. All right, now we get to outlining, which is almost always where people start, right? Okay, so usually people are like, man, outlining sucks. This takes forever. I can never get exactly what I want to say. But once the hardest part, now it just flows, because you front-loaded all that work. You know what the system is going to be like. You know what is going to happen, like why you have that big bad. You know your personality type, so you're going to be like, all right, cool. This sort of personality, I'm over here, like, I'm going to like go and find these like super cool, fun abilities in the system that I can use that synergize super well right through here, boom, boom, boom. You know, everything just flows, right? So we front-loaded all of that other work, and now we have a great picture in our mind of what our series is going to look like. We have this like amazing idea, and now it's codified, right? It's right there. You can describe it to someone. You know exactly what's going to be coming, and you don't have to struggle writing down like how are they going to react in fun and games, right? If you're using that model, I think that model is like Save the Cat, right? It's a novel. Yeah. They all kind of blend after a while. It's all hero's journey. So how this works altogether is our character will use their unique personality to start working toward the end game, bound by the rules and benefits of the system. Oh, that's so cool. It all comes together. Boom, right there. So, like, I recommend using Hero's Journey, Save the Cat lens for someone unsure where to. Like, if you have never written a book, or like you're like here because you want to write a book, those are some great informational things that you can read to like start getting that process going. If you already know, you're like, I'm a 3-act person, I'm a 5-act person, I'm a pantser, I don't know any of this stuff, and what you're saying is absolutely crazy to me, that's fine. Like, however you want to do it, I do hope that it helps somehow, right? So, does that all make sense? Like, okay, now, to anyone who's not nodding, I would love if you would ask questions. And if you are nodding and you're just like, totally. I would love some questions. Do we have how much time left?
17.
So, okay, at home this took me 37 minutes to get through it, but up here, wow, that's great. So hopefully I wasn't talking too fast.
Hey Dakota, question for you. Whenever you're applying these...
Can you raise the microphone up to you or move down to it?
Sorry about that. When you're applying this to your series and everything, how would you approach this if you're trying to build a full universe of interconnected series? So, think like the Other Life series, where there's a whole bunch of different trilogies all combining together at some point. Would you try to do it in 2 steps, do the whole universe together, and then do each individual series, or would you try to blend it all at one time?
So this is where that creating the system first really shines, right? So you're like, hey, I want to make connected series, right? They're all kind of using the same base system. See how the words of that all come together, right? So if you're like, hey, I'm like, give me a system, like for you, like what do you want it to do? Like, give me a genre or whatever else, like that we would use.
I mean, it's all in your LitRPG, so
okay. So LitRPG, that's super easy for me. All right, so we're trying to build a universe where we're going to have multiple connected series coming together, right? This is where, so say you're making that system, right? And you're like, okay, at level 1, I have access to some kind of skill, right? LitRPG. And is it going to be different? Is it going to be a different style of things in those other books? Or by creating that system first and saying, here's what, no matter where you are in this universe, you have access to these same abilities, not maybe the exact type, like maybe not the exact same skill, but the same boundaries of power within them, right? So like a nice clean tier system, right? Do you remember what it could be? I got you a little feedback here. Okay, so like, because I'm like, should I keep going? All right. No, so give me an example of something that your characters can do when they start out.
Basic magic spells.
Sure,
and
like
4 elements.
fireballs, lightning, like haste, or things like that, right? Okay, so what I do in all of this, and I have this in like my full Murderhobo series, I use this for Completionist Chronicles, I use this for basically every series I'm writing past Final Fantasy, right? Because back then I was very confused in what I was doing. All right. So if you can say at level 1 to level X, I can use this type of magic, and it is bound, like I say, at tier 1 it is touch. So it's everything at tier 1 is touch range. Right? Now, touch range can be, you touch them with a club, right? It could be anything like that where it's touch range, okay? And then you're going up a tier, or like, say you get to level 10 in that skill and it gets like a new little add-on, right? Your new add-on should always be something that is translatable to other things, okay? So now it's tier 2, for sake of it. It's a tier 2 spell. You can continue to use it in touch range. Or you can huck it at something, right? Fiery hands turns into fireball, right? Too easy. Third one, like say we get to tier 3. Now it is a touch spell that you can use at range that has an area of effect. So now your flaming hands turns into a fireball that explodes, right? Do you see how you can translate that out across any other spell or any other kind of ability, even alchemy? Right? So we're like, hey, I'm going to be creating magic potions now, or love potions, or I'm gonna like start a distillery with a cowboy out here, right? Or a vampire showed up and I'm trying to figure out if I want to be a vampire or something, right? You can translate all that out to anything else going through that story. Like, any one of us met a vampire. Are we not gonna take vampirism? Come on, right? We're all gonna do it, right? I mean, it's pretty easy choice. So having those nice levels of things that happen are easier than saying, here's what the spell is. Because if you have to decide what every single ability, spell, usage of something is, you're gonna have way too much time invested in it you're not gonna be writing, okay? So having effects that the things that you're trying to use are bound by is going to be much more effective. Does that make sense for your students?
Appreciate it, thanks.
Absolutely. Again, like Michael Jackson, and just like, okay.
Hey there. So I totally realize this is more of a writing craft question,
Sure.
but what are your sort of maybe quick tips in that case for building these systems without info dumping?
Without info dumping, right? So part of it can be just you understand what your system is looking like, and you're feeding that to your audience over time, right? So it could be like, hey, the system is here, and no one has ever gotten past tier 1 because we've never needed to, right? We've never had to leave our small area and learn about the big wide world for whatever reason it could be, right? And then you have a character that for some reason, some inciting incident, some great calamity arrives that says, I need to go out and learn more about it. And so you can be learning it right along with your audience. Your audience can be learning it right along with your character, but you gotta know what it is, right? Like as the author, right? So that's where front-loading this work really comes in handy. So for me, it's all spreadsheets, right? I have 10 total tiers of power, right? And those translate across almost all of my books, even though they look wildly different in how I use them, right? So I have basically a punch wizard where he's like, I cast fist, right? And that is completely different from like Joe the Ritualist, who is like, okay, I am scribbling on the ground and I hope someone gets near enough for this to affect that. Ha ha ha, please, something. Right? So very different, very, very different system, very different personality, but it has the same open formula that allows people to like move through and gain power in new and unique, interesting ways without actually being new, unique, but it's still interesting.
So it's really using your characters and their discovery to help sort of display that in real time as the reader is
Exactly,
reading.
right? Because if you want to solve a problem later, it's Chekhov's gun, right? So You're like, hey, I found this gun. But if you have that, great, you can use it later, you can shoot something. Okay, 10 minutes, thank you. I should have been seeing that at the end of the presentation. You can use Chekhov's gun later, but if you're just walking along, and you drove out there in a Tesla, what's the chances you have a handgun, right? Unless you find one in the world, probably not very high. So if you are walking along, you go toward the end of the book and you just suddenly pull out a gun and shoot someone, and people are like, where the heck did that come from, right? So it's a very, very similar concept, right? So you can learn it with, or your audience can learn it with your character, but you must know it first. So sorry if I'm repeating myself a lot on this.
Awesome, thank you.
Absolutely. It's very circular logic, so it's kind of thing.
Okay. How do you avoid the pitfall of power creep when you're setting up a system, especially if you've got a hero that maybe has a unique ability or the ability to bend the rules in some specific way?
Okay, so allowing for flexibility, but not rule breaking, right? Is there a reason your main character has that type of like rule bending ability? Like, hey, no one without this piece, like this coin, can walk through this area because there's like just a wall of like force that blocks them, right? Or like you cannot use your bike in this area, right? You can't get past the sap, like poke and stuff. So if there's a reason why you can get around it with your skill set, great. Otherwise, you're going to have someone helping you through, right? So power creep is one of those things that is always difficult for everyone. But having these nice thresholds of like, all right, I could walk up and kill this like tier 2 mage with like burning hands, but he can shoot a fireball at me from 50 feet away. So I'm going to be dodging fireballs the whole way, right? So there's nothing saying like I'm going to lose. It's just that your odds of winning are much lower, right? And so that's one of the things with power creep is if you have this I win mentality, it's going to make it harder to write interesting characters. And that's where it comes back to forcing witty outcomes, right? Somewhere in here, this is why I can this thing. But yeah, whatever. So forcing witty outcomes, right? You're like, again, just like that. You're like, hey, I'm fighting this guy that's throwing exploding lightning orbs that shock everything within 20 feet. Well, I have an ability that lets me move at range, like blink, right? So that'd be a tier 2 spell, right? It lets me move me over there. Otherwise, the tier 1 version is called running, right? Because that's the touch spell. If I want to go from here to here, I cast run, right? But tier 2, I can be like, I cast blink, right? So now I'm running at someone, and that might be charging up the tier 2. That might like be the requirement. That might be what I need to put into that spell to make it happen, the economy of magic. And so I'm running at them. They throw a lightning orb, and instead of killing me instantly, I'm suddenly 21 feet this way, just on the fringe of getting fried. And so then I can come up at the guy even though he is otherwise able to defeat me. So it's a witty outcome instead of just running up and I defeat the bad guy. Right? Okay. Does that help, or does that make sense? If not, find me afterwards. We can go over it more detail. Last one. Go. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for all the information.
Please.
I've written my first novel. I haven't
Awesome.
released it yet. I'm
Congratulations.
here to learn about everything, and I love the Enneagram. Been following that for years. So, when you talk about system first creation, when you say system, is that another word for formula? So follow the
It is.
formula to save the cat, and then system being like if you get stuck with your characters, go back to the Enneagram.
It's a lot closer to tropes, right? Can you
Okay.
tell me what genre you're writing?
Mystery.
Mystery. Okay. I should. Okay, I was gonna try and make a joke about being a mystery.
I know all this magic stuff is like, wow.
So, but let's look at Sherlock Holmes, right?
Okay.
So, like the quintessential detective. So when we're talking about Sherlock Holmes, he is an enigma when he is first written, right? He is this random person with he's this drug-addled, like crazy strong man, and we have no idea why he can do what he does, but Scotland Yard calls him every time as a consultant, even though all available data says they should just be doing their own work. Right? Okay, so the system is, in that scenario, the system is we have real world physics. Okay? So we've decided on our physics, real world physics. And then everything in that case must be logically explained. So our real world physics are actually a lot easier than magic physics because we don't have to make them up, right? So, hey, we have a guy over here. Why can he do what he does? He's using real world physics. Okay, he's super coked up, so he can just like bend iron bars. Got it. He has an eidetic memory, and like so he can remember like crazy amounts of detail. And he is trained to spot all of these little discrepancies that anyone could learn if they take the time to do it, or just kind of tend toward that sort of thing. So there's our system. Super easy. Like we have, in that case, we have our system, real world physics. We have the big bad, like, hey, there's a glowing dog up there that he's mauling people, and we think it's a ghost, right? So there's our calamity. Step 3 is what's his personality? I think he's a type 5, I want to say, on the... So, there it is, okay. Type 5 is the investor. Perfect. Look at that. All right, I feel really good about that right now. All right. Yes, my years of study are paying off. So yeah, that's an easy one. He's a type 5 archetype. Super easy. Like, he's a hardcore investigator. Perfect. That means there's a full, like, 10-page, wow, I'm sorry, because I'm just spitting and saying, like, Jurassic Park over here. There's like a 10-page document right on their site. Type 5, what sort of things does this person go through? I will bet you money that Sherlock Holmes is listed in characters that have this sort of thing, right? So we have our real world physics, did I say that? We have our calamity, we have our archetype. This is beautiful. Now we have the guy going through trying to figure out why there's a glowing dog in real world physics. Too easy, right? So that all just kind of comes together, write an outline. He goes and finds out, yeah, the dog just has like glowing paint on it, and that guy's just a really bad dog owner. Too easy. Right? It's the end of the story. Like, sorry if you haven't read that. It's been out for like 105 years. Spoilers, but still. Okay. Does that help?
It helps.
Cool. Does it answer your question?
It's getting there.
Okay, so ask more. No one else is behind you.
Well, again, I'm a new writer, so this whole word trope and everything is kind of new to me. So I'm still trying to figure out.
Understood. Okay, so
these basics.
A trope is essentially the idea of this is the idiosyncrasies of this type of book that make it this genre.
Okay.
Okay, so clean romance, right? You're gonna have like the guy chasing the girl chasing the guy. At the end of the story, they might maybe share a sweet little chast kiss, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like any romance people in here that are like, you're wrong. I'm sorry, I don't write romance, but that's kind of like what I'm getting out of it. In horror, you're gonna have like this creeping existential dread probably that's going on. You're gonna probably have a lot more gore. You're gonna have the things that horror readers are looking for when they're reading a horror story. So a mystery, people want to know what they don't know. Right? That's the whole point of a mystery, in my mind. Right? Like, they want to have a witty outcome. They want to see something done in a really clever way, right? And to me, that's just what mystery is.
Thank you.
Please, thank you. More people. We have like a minute and a half left, and I could spend it talking about me, but I'd rather not.
I just wondered, thank you for your presentation. I wondered if you could talk about the physics again. Because I'm thinking about, I love those books where it's like real world physics, but like,
just a little bit off.
but you don't want to oversell it as that kind of thing. I think about, every Marvel movie. It's like, really you're running down this thing while it's in midair, while fighting, like those kinds of things. And I'm just curious how you think about those, where it's like, you really want to just stretch it without breaking it. I'm curious how you think about that.
So look at urban fantasy, right? So it's real world physics, and it's just a windowless building, and that's where the vampires hang out, right? It's not a huge stretch of the imagination to be like, I wonder what's in that building. It could be vampires. I mean, that's not crazy, right? I mean, it could be, but Occam's razor says probably not. It's like real world physics. Or at least that's what they want you to think. Now we're writing conspiracy stories. All right. So the physics are usually just a set of codified rules that you must follow, and that's the beautiful thing. Okay, so I'm going to keep talking. I don't know we're ending, but no, it's a set of rules that you must follow, right? Gravity is a great rule, right? Because everyone follows gravity because they have to, and it's just something that's not even thought about. But that's a real world physics, right? Real world physics. And so basically it's the same thing when you're writing your books. You have to find things, rules that you cannot break, that you have to work around to make it interesting and fun.
Thank you.
Cool. That's all I got.
That's so cool. I'm gonna put the iPad with me.